first person this week is Delaware Congresswoman Lisa Blunt-Rochester. Welcome back to First.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Now, you've officially been in office a little over 100 days. What is the state of Congress now for Democrats?
Well, I would say the state of Congress, the state of our country is very busy. That's probably the best word I could use. We have had some incredible situations come up, everything from tackling the Affordable Care Act and having conversations, and also even having a bill introduced to talking about, you know, the potential and influence and the real influence of Russia in our elections in our country. And so it's a very important time, it's a very busy time, and it's also a time when we really are questioning, you know, who are we? Where are we going as a country? And so it's a very important time, and I feel honored to be representing Delaware at this time.
I'm glad you brought up the Affordable Care Act. Many GOP congressional members have held town meetings in their districts. They've been met with a lot of people basically just pushing back on the health care law. Have you had any of those meetings?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of things. One, Senator Carper and I hosted a meeting at Christiana Care, where we actually met with different folks from the community, as well as, and it was actually held in an emergency room right here in Wilmington. And then there was a separate roundtable that included people, everybody from Lolita Lopez from our federally qualified health centers to a patient, Carrie Orr, who had been a beneficiary of the Affordable Care Act. And we actually had a roundtable discussion. And then we also had an open house in our office where people came in and told their stories. I think what's the most important thing is that even when I was campaigning, people talked about the importance and the need for health care, and it was one of the things that I even ran on was strengthening the Affordable Care Act, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And so our whole focus was, you know, let's really take a look at how this is going to impact Delaware. And I got a chance to even speak on the floor of the House about the actual impact on jobs. 9,000 jobs could have been impacted, 60,000 people on Medicaid, 38,000 people who have health care through their employer. So it was important that we make our case known for Delaware as well.
Oftentimes when you have those meetings in various settings, you get people pushing for things, supporting, talking against. It seems like when you watch cable news, it appears that the Democrats are always fighting with the Republicans or vice versa. I was just listening to the news this morning, and Democrats said, hey, if President Trump does not show us those taxes, we're not going to support this tax reform. Are things really as crazy as it seems on cable news?
You know, it's interesting because I've been fortunate. We have our freshman class, there are about 50 of us, and in that class it's pretty much split, half Democrat, half Republican. And from the very beginning, we as a class said that we wanted to try to find common ground. And so we, even in one of our first meetings, had all the staff leave so that we could talk about areas that we have in common, like anybody who had a port, raise your hand. Anybody who's served in government or never served, raise your hand. And we even, most recently, myself, 2 Republicans and another Democrat, hosted our class at the Holocaust Museum to have a conversation, and it got into a conversation about immigration and immigration reform and where we might have some common beliefs and some common vision. So I think that what you see on TV is TV, but you know, as people, you know, folks sometimes maybe have the same vision, but just a different way of getting there. And so for us, there are areas where you've got to stand on your principles. For example, like the tax returns. That's important. Transparency is important to us. And also we want to make sure that there aren't any kind of improprieties or things that we want to continue to have confidence in our government. So let's be transparent. But then there are other things where we maybe can find some common ground, like immigration.
Okay. Really quick, do you have any Republican friends?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, moving right along, because I want to cover a few things. Now, you are on the Agriculture and Education committees. There are some big votes coming up.
Right.
What's the latest with both committees?
Well, let me tell you, I am so excited about my committee assignments, and I'm glad you gave me a chance to share this with folks because you know, you get to sometimes put in your wish list, but a lot of times you might not get what you want, especially as a freshman. But Education and Workforce was the first committee that I was assigned to. And as a former Secretary of Labor here in Delaware and CEO of the Urban League, to me, I heard that up and down the state that education was important. We're going to be dealing with the higher education reauthorization bill. And I wanted to be on committees where things were going to get done, you know, for Delawareans and for the American people. So higher ed was important because people talked about the expense of college. And so college affordability, looking at workforce opportunities and skills and making sure we have a trained workforce is important. And then I fought to get on the agriculture committee because people don't even realize, number one, we've got more chickens than people in the state of Delaware.
Okay.
But we've got a lot of farmers, family farms, and it's $8 billion in economic activity. And it's also rural and urban. It's nutrition programs, it's SNAP, it's biotech, which I'm on the biotech and research subcommittee. So we get to deal with things like Dow DuPont. And we had a saying during the campaign, you know, when Lisa goes to Washington, we all go to Washington. So I tried to get on committees where we were all represented.
Yes.
And this coming year, we're doing the Farm Bill. That's a huge bill that is a lot of times, most times, done in a bipartisan way. So again, committees where there was some bipartisan activity and we can get stuff done.
Okay, awesome. Now, have you adjusted to your commute yet before we go?
So, well, you know, I'm doing what I call the Joe Biden hybrid.
Okay.
And I really, it's important because Congress is a little different than the Senate in terms of how often we go back and forth. For the past 6 weeks, we went 6 weeks straight and almost Monday through Friday because our Republican colleagues were really trying to cram some things in. So it's been hard to even just get back home to get things done, but I'm excited. I love the train, Amtrak. Yes. I love going back and forth. It's my time to actually work and decompress.
Okay, well, I love the train too. Thanks so much, Lisa Blunt-Rochester, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt-Rochester, the Democratic Congresswoman, always here in Delaware. It's always a pleasure. And if, for those of you at home, you can watch this interview in its entirety at newsworks.org/Delaware.